I'm still faster than you.
Hello and welcome back to Unlimited Limited, the show where we work together to get better at limited environments in Star Wars Unlimited. So, this is just kind of a check-in partway through Ashes Limited. Most people have a good idea for how they're going to play this format. Everybody has their own styles of leaders and color combinations that they prefer. All of this, of course, coming out of Galactic, where this has been the most competitive limited set yet because of those Galactic main event limited rounds. That doesn't mean there's still not limited competitive events for Ashes of the Empire still on the horizon. For example, there's a lot of PQs coming up. I'm going to one this weekend that is limited. So this is a little bit of sort of, I guess, musings in preparation for that, but also I think it is kind of handy to take a step back and look at this format as a whole and sort of categorize the different decks and figure out what are some optimal places we can be in, what are some places that are maybe not optimal but are good enough, and see where we should be avoiding entirely. So let's get into it. Everyone kind of knows that in Constructed and in Limited, Cad is the best. He is the best by, quite a lot in Constructed. I think Mandalorian just won a Sectors, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a substantial part of the field. I think he will continue to be until he is maybe suspended. I think if that happens, it will probably happen pretty soon. Cad is crazy. And then, of course, in Limited, he's not going to get suspended in Limited, so you can still play him. He is the best deck. Some people like to make arguments for other leaders, but I think in almost every case, that argument is this is one of the strongest things you can do other than play a good Cad deck, right? And just to be clear, it's not always right to play Cad when you open Cad, right? It's possible that, let's say you open an absolutely insane Ezra pool in a sealed tournament, and your Cad is just kind of mid, right? That can happen, and then it's right to play Ezra. But I think most of the time, if you're opening this guy and you get even somewhat decent on the packs that you open, it's probably right to play Cad. So this video is kind of framed in a bit of a draft conversation. What I mean by that is I'm going to talk about cards that are especially good in certain leaders that are maybe okay elsewhere, but aren't quite as top tier. You'll see what I mean in a second when I show some examples, but this is just sort of more of a signal conversation. Like, if you see somebody sitting a couple seats away from you and they have, let's say, Ezra as one of their leaders, and then they pass you some of these cards that I think are exceptionally good in Ezra and maybe not elsewhere, that's maybe a sign that they're maybe not playing Ezra. Now, of course, they still could be, but it's all about probabilities. So let's get into that. Obviously, for Constructed, Cad Blue is an absolute menace, and that is true in Limited as well. Oh, also, I'm limiting my talk to commons and uncommons, so worth noting here. If otherwise, I would just have Previsal and Nine Sister and Chimera on the screen right now, and that's not very realistic to get in a draft. And if you do get all of those in a Cad Blue draft, congratulations on your 3-0. These cards, especially Imperial Armored Commando and Rancor Keeper, are good elsewhere as well, but I think they're exceptionally good in CAD, such that if you see them coming a little bit later, it's a little bit less likely that the people around you are going to be playing CAD. And someone may say, oh, but how is Imperial Armored Commando better in CAD, and kind of a signal to you? And the answer to that, it's a little bit second order, but I still think it's worth noting, is that if you are seeing this pretty late, and you are considering CAD, and you take this, people around you that may have opened CAD may not be playing it because they fear it's not open because of what you're doing. And as a result, because they're not playing CAD, Imperial Armored Commando gets better, because of course Imperial Armored Commando into CAD is just Ando Commission, right? It's just a 4-3 shielded, or 4-3 Sentinel, sorry. So it does get better whenever you are more confident that there are fewer CADs at the table. So that is worth noting, absolutely. Battered Hullcraft, of course, is just, it's fine elsewhere. It's sort of a low medium 2-drop, I'd say. But in CAD, it's quite strong, right? Just because it comes down and it kills a lot of turn 1 plays. So there's 11 turn 1 space plays, and this kills 6 of them, which is crazy. So over half of your opponent's turn 1 space plays can just be straight up killed by a Battered Hullcraft, leaving your opponent with initiative, but you going into turn 2 with a unit where they have none. Very, very strong play in CAD. Not that great elsewhere, because it goes from killing, 6 ships to 3 ships, and one of those ships is a rare. So you know, it can still be used, especially out of the sideboard if your opponent is trying to do this like space aggro thing, but in Cad, it's just kind of everywhere that you should be using a card like this. So that's Cad Blue, things I'm looking out for. Cad Green, this is, by the way, the only leader that I did 2 different colors for. For the rest of the leaders, I was like, this is what I think their best color pair is, but for Cad, I think there's kind of 2. And the reason why is because of these 2 ambush guys. They're just, and then, you know, there's what's his name, Moff Gideon, which is quite strong as well. But I'm going to say that these 2 are especially strong in Cad, which is sort of the point of this video. Not to point out the best green uncommons and commons, but the best green uncommons and commons for Cad. And the reason is kind of obvious for these ones. They just do the damage. They just do more damage, right? Like, this normally can kill something with 4 HP. Oh, and Cad can kill something with 5 HP. This normally can kill something with 5 HP. Oh, and Cad can kill something with 6 HP. Right? It just makes them better. And then, of course, Incidental Ping, this one has Overwhelm. That's cool. But, like, yeah, I think if you're trying to do Cad Green, these should be very high pickups. But, of course, they're very high pickups in basically every deck, especially Defenders of the Forest, because it's only 1 color. So, again, if you see this coming late and someone is in Cad, the chance increases that you can rule out Cad Green as something that they're doing. Again, it's all probabilities. They might still be on Cad Green. Maybe this pack had, like, a Ninth Sister or something in it that they had to take. Who knows, right? But it's all about probabilities. So the next category, and it's kind of a tier below, I would say, but it's close. And if you build the deck well, it can absolutely beat Cad. And I'm talking about Ezra, Greef, and Shin as the red-yellow aggro leaders. So let's talk about each of those individually briefly. So for Ezra, I think Ezra yellow. And I think for all 3 of these leaders, just I'll spoil it a little bit, the red-yellow deck is the aggro deck. And for these leaders that are all red or yellow, their base should complement that. Now, that's, again, not to say that Ezra Green is not good. I played it at Galactic in some of the side events. It was great. I played Ezra Blue at Galactic in the main event draft, and it was 2-1, it was fine. Those decks can be good, but if you're in Ezra, you're probably, if you open some crazy Ezra rare in pack 1 and you know you're going to force Ezra, you're probably looking for Ezra yellow. Just to be clear, don't force cards, but... Okay, so, why each of these? Well, Pegasus Triwing, of course. Ezra throws around a lot of advantage, and this is, eats that advantage to push in more damage. All of that is something he wants. Inspired Recruit is, I think, especially worth noting. This card is, like, actually kind of mid in a lot of places. There are some 2/4s, because of the prevalence of Cad. There's, what's it called? Leppy Ratcatcher. If you open on this and your opponent goes, okay, Leppy Ratcatcher, like... rough life, right? There's a lot of downsides to playing a 1 HP unit as your turn 1 play. And those downsides still exist in Ezra. You can still get Leppy Ratcatchered, but the payoff is higher, such that I think it becomes worth it to run it here as like a card that you actually want, whereas in some other decks, it's a card that you tolerate. Right, so this card, quite strong. Honorable Night Owl, there's a lot of 2-power units that this makes into 3-powered units. Again, during Galactic, my Ezra Blue list, I opened 5 of these, or I drafted 5 of these. I think I only played 4 in the deck, but I kind of maybe should have played 5. And it seemed really strong because I had all of these 2-power units, and now they can enable Ezra, which can enable this, which can enable whatever unit. Once you get 1 advantage bouncing around, you're feeling okay on Ezra. So this was very helpful with that. The Flare Star Attack Shuttle, of course, comes in with it only hits for 2, which Ezra doesn't like, but the first time it hits for 3, so that can buff something else, which can then buff this back, and then they can again continue to cycle those advantage tokens. The only unit that can't hit for 3 on itself here is Blade 3, but again, if you're able to get an advantage token on it, or if your opponent is, attacks your base at some point, maybe you are successfully lane dodging them in space, which is certainly what Ezra wants to do. I almost included that 1-cost 2/2 ship here, but that card is great, but I don't know if I would describe it as like a better in Ezra card. Some of these are also a little bit, like, sketchy on that. Like Blade 3 is probably equivalently good in Ezra and Greef, but here we are. So yeah, all of these things that kind of get to 3 power or have 3 power on their own or push something else to have 3 power, in my opinion, are cards that, again, again, anecdote here, but at Galactic during the draft, I think I got pushed an inspired recruit at one point, or at the very, it was like pick 13 or maybe pick 14. I don't remember. It was a very late pick. And I just thought, oh, okay, this is open. Like, I can do this. Whereas that's not normally something I would think about when seeing a card like this. But when I am trying to do Ezra myself, this tells me that nobody else is trying to do it. Now, for those of you who saw my Galactic recap video, I was the only Ezra at the table. I was the only one who opened an Ezra. So it's quite obvious in that case that nobody else wants this card, which is actually, again, sort of credence that these are Ezra cards. Because, again, I had 3 of these, I think. I had 5 of these. Like, I think I had 1 or 2 of these. I think 2. And there were other red aggro decks at the table, but these cards are just so specifically good in Ezra that they came around so late. And I think that if there was another Ezra at the table, I would not have seen these late inspired recruits. So even if there was someone else who opened an Ezra, whether I saw these late or not might give me a hint as to whether that's what they're doing. So that's something, in my opinion, that we ought to be looking out for. Greef, again, kind of the same idea. Pegasus Tri-Wing again, this one's just great in both. I almost didn't include it in the video because this is a video about like specifically cards that are like specifically good in certain decks. But yeah, Pegasus Tri-Wing as well here. If there's any Ezra or Greef, they're going to be scooping these up. This one just comes in ready here. There's no hoops at all. It's honestly probably better here than it is in Ezra. The Purrgil, of course, is incredible for a similar reason that ATST Raider's great in Cad, is it basically does an extra damage. Here, the Purrgil basically does an extra damage, right? It comes down, it gets an advantage token from Greef, it comes down, it hits for 6, that kills all but 8 space units in the format, including Suma Verminoth, Ravager, Eye of Scion, who are all legendaries. Executor, which is a special rarity. It kills every common space unit. And all but, 3 uncommon space units. The 3 being Purrgil Ultra Home 1 and Mandalorian's Flagship. Other than that, kills everything. And those, the cheapest unit that it doesn't kill is 7 in Mandalorian Flagship or Eye of Scion. So what I'm saying is that Purrgil kills everything in space when you're playing in Greef. And so very strong. And then if you don't need its full power, you can sequence it, of course, where you do the ambush first and then Greef's ability so that you have that extra advantage token for later. That could absolutely help in a pinch as well if you only need to deal a couple damage to, like, you know, finish off a space unit. You don't need that full big hit, but the option is good. We always say on this channel, options are great. Sabine, of course, is like, everybody kind of knows this at this point. This is not a secret at all. Like, an absolute blowout in Greef. It's like good. She's good elsewhere, but in Greef, she's a 5-cost 5/5 shielded that exhausts 2 ground units. Like, insane. That then has the potential down the line to exhaust more ground units if you know, some other advantage token is put on her. Like, absolute bonkers, of course. And then Yellow Ace's Bomber is sort of the absolute ideal 2-drop in this deck, right? You go some random turn 1 ship, give an advantage with Greef, claim initiative, Yellow Ace's Bomber, do that extra damage, then this has an advantage token on it, so that when it attacks, it cashes in for an extra 2. You just push damage so incredibly fast if you can have a curve like that. Depending on whether you're lane dodging or not, or if your opponent is playing around it, you might not even need the initiative. I will say this loses like a half of a point because if your opponent is on something like Cad or a deck that's like a little bit slower than Greef, and you play a unit and they do have initiative, they'll probably trade into your unit and not let you start going face, and then Yellow Ace's Bomber is a bit of a dud. But no, this card is just insane. And once again, though, so this and Pegasus Tri-Wing suffer from similar ideas, especially because Yellow Ace's Bomber is only a single color, it's just heroism. But it suffers a little bit in sort of this picture I'm trying to draw of cards that if you see late mean a specific leader is open, in that it is actually good in other leaders too, but I think it is especially good in Greef, right? This is like probably a top 10 pickup, including rares and legendaries for Greef. Next is Shin, which is again an aggro deck. This is an aggro deck that is like designed in some way to beat other aggro decks because it can start, especially if you have initiative. Initiative is the, like, in those other decks I mentioned, Greef, Ezra, whatever, it's really important. But in Shin, it's like it's the most important thing, pretty much, right? Just being able to go into turn 2, get base damage in, and shut down another play from them is like insane. So Pretty Abandoned, of course, is like the Shin card, right? Everybody's figured that out at this point. It exhausts everything for like a while. And then if you can get advantage on it or anything else like that, it just forever basically exhausts things. Ewok Warrior as well is something that sort of I think is specifically good in Shin Red, although it's good elsewhere as well. But specifically in Shin Red, I think it's better. The hidden keyword matters a lot. Being able to stick a unit to go to the next turn and attack and exhaust one of their smaller units is quite strong, I think. Merrick's Fiendfighter, do I even need to mention that? Because you're playing all these low HP, high attack units like Pretty Abandoned, like later on Tatooine Sandbeast. This extra damage and overwhelm that you get is can and will just completely win you games. Overwhelm, of course, is a strong keyword in Shin, because if they manage to stick a Sentinel, which is typically the aggro deck's worst weakness, and to be clear, it's not great as well. Like, if someone sticks a Sentinel against you, that's a pretty strong play. But when you have overwhelm, you can sometimes get through for a couple of damage and exhaust a smaller unit, so that's still nice. Tatooine Sandbeast, of course, hidden, strong keyword for Shin, and then it's an 8/4, right? This exhausts like leaders, or just basically anything your opponent plays ever for the rest of the game. And then I also put Masterstroke here. Oh, also Tatooine Sandbeast. This is an example of a card that I actually think is very good in Shin, and I think is not very good elsewhere. So this is something that I would take as a very big sign that somebody's not in Shin if I saw this in a pack. And then I'm including Masterstroke as well. This is just sort of a great aggro finisher. This is a little secret sauce that I don't even know if I want to share, but it's not that secret. I think other people have been doing it too. But I play this off aspect sometimes, depending on what I'm trying to do. It just can be surprise lethal in a format that can sometimes feel kind of racy, where you just ignore each other's units, and ignoring each other's units is exactly what you, as the Masterstroke player, want to do. So, big fan of this card, and then of course when you can play it for 2, like you're supposed to, then it's even better. Your opponent will have these random exhausted units throughout the game that you have, that maybe haven't been able to get their full value, but are still on the board. And then if you stick a unit in Masterstroke, those are all +1 attack. That's not bad. So I think that Masterstroke is another card that will be picked up by other aggro decks as well, similar to Merrick's Fiendfighter. Although, I will say for Merrick's Fiendfighter's case, you'll play it in Cad, you'll play it in Balon, but the best other aggro decks are in Heroism. So this is by far highest picked in Shin, I would say. Good. So that's what I would consider a tier 2 deck in the format, or maybe a tier 1 if you consider Cad tier 0. I would say that there is another category of deck, and we can talk if we want about whether we put this above or below just broadly the aggro category. I think it sits a little bit below. That being said, I do think that sometimes it's above, depending on the pool. I think that what is tier 2 between this and this depends on the day. Depends on what you open, depends on all that stuff. I'd probably lean a little bit more towards calling the aggro decks. My personal favorite aggro leader is actually Ezra this set. I would consider him maybe a little above these, but I think these are all very close, with Ahsoka maybe being a tiny bit below, but I think it's very close. So I think Balon Green is the best for a few reasons. Mostly it gets you access to this crazy good uncommon in Moff Gideon. The fact that you can stick him and just oh, cool, he's a 4/7 Sentinel that you got to play on turn 2, and that has upside when he's defeated, right? That's insane. Balon is a weird one because there are other, Balon Yellow and Balon Red can both be pretty good space aggro decks, or just aggro decks in general. But I do still think I like Balon Green a little bit more. This Perseverance card, I'm gonna skip right ahead and just talk about it. This card is kind of terrible in a lot of games, but I think it's kind of insane in Balon. The reason is you can pump one of your units, give it +2/+2, right? Your opponent maybe attacks into it if they're scared of it, or lets you get an attack and get a favorable trade-off, and then they kind of ignore that unit because it's exhausted and it's going to die at the end of the turn. So in their brain, it kind of is that unit doesn't exist anymore. And most of the time, that's true. The unit will just die at the end of the turn, and that's that. But if you play Perseverance, that's not the case. Not only is that unit back with some amount of HP where they live, but now they also have a shield. That's like very, very strong. I think of it almost like a weird kind of removal in a lot of sense, right? Because you're using your unit to get a favorable trade, and that unit is not dying. Sure, you're exhausting it, but like, and then you get a little shield as a payoff, right? This is like a very, calling this card removal is weird, but it like kind of is in Balon. And I don't think it's great elsewhere because it doesn't really directly affect the board. But in Balon, you can kind of trick it into directly affecting the board. So I like it a lot. Mos Eisley modifier is, I think, also quite strong for lots of reasons. Mostly just you can get these like random big units with Balon with this buff, especially on the flip turn, right? If you do a pump and then flip Balon and then attack with Balon, that unit's got +4/+4. And if that unit has, if your opponent's been running units into it to kill it at the end of the phase, you can Mos Eisley modifier and hit for whatever that unit's power is, +4, plus whatever you get from the grit. Like, I think Mos Eisley modifier is like a fine card, but I think in Balon it's like kind of scary, and it almost serves the same purpose as Master Stroke does in Shin, where it just closes out games sometimes, or gets you like such monstrously favorable trades that you're feeling so massively ahead anyway. And then Shin, obviously, this card is like built for Balon. It's just insanely powerful on its own. Any blue villain deck will play this. I almost didn't want to include it on this slide, but I do think it's better in Balon. And if you see this card coming around, I would assume that not only are they not on Balon, but nobody in that sort of range is on blue villain. Or again, it's all about probabilities. They're less likely to be on blue villain. Next is Ahsoka, and I put a big question mark here. And the reason for that is because first of all, I don't know. And I want your opinions on it. So I think Ahsoka Blue is probably the best Ahsoka deck, but I don't think it's because of any particular card. I think it's just Ahsoka, even in any color, but even, in blue, which I think is her best color, she doesn't have like specific combo pieces that work exceptionally well with her as far as I can tell. Again, maybe I'm missing something. I talked to a bunch of very strong locals as well in my area, and they kind of agreed. They couldn't think of any like specific common or uncommon, again, of course, that goes exceptionally well with Ahsoka in the way that the other, Peridea Bandit goes with Shin, or Pegasus ship goes with Ezra or Greef. But I think what Ahsoka wants is just a crazy curve. She just wants to curve out really, really well. And if you can do that, that's good. So in terms of identifying whether someone is on Ahsoka a couple seats down, I think it's actually kind of pretty difficult to do. And I don't think you can look at specific cards. You have to look at color markers and curve, right? Has a lot of... is there like no green heroism for a couple of picks? Okay, well, maybe. Is there, no blue heroism for a couple of picks? Well, maybe if they're trying to do the best version of the deck, I guess. But in terms of like looking for, it's missing what's that card called? The 4-5/5 vanilla. I mean, yeah, that card's good in Ahsoka, for sure. It's great in Ahsoka Blue, but like it's also great in like every blue hero deck ever, right? And is Ahsoka the only like blue hero deck where that's the best version of the deck? Probably, yeah. Except for, I guess, Luke, but that doesn't count. But yeah, I don't know. This one's a little bit of a tricky one, and I definitely would love to hear people's thoughts on this if there's specific markers they look for whenever they're trying to figure out if somebody at their table is playing Ahsoka. For me, I'm just looking at colors and curve, I think, at this point. I can't think of a specific card. Then there's the rest. These are worth just like a brief talk, I think. Like, Sabine is very clearly a very strong leader with a very strong ability. Her stats are a little bit weak. And the only reason why she's not like a tier 2 leader is because Cad exists. It's just so rough into her ability. I'm not going to say she becomes unplayable into Cad. I don't think that's true, but I think it's really bad if you're playing Sabine and you sit across from a Cad. That being said, if you can fade Cad, or somehow there's no Cads opened at your table in an 8-person draft that's in pod, then yeah, play Sabine. She'll beat a lot of other decks that maybe won't expect her because people don't play her that much because weak into the best deck in the format. But I think that she is still definitely something that people should have plans for, even if that plan is Cad Bane. But even if you're not playing Cad Bane, Sloane I think is also good. Again, I don't know if there's like specific commons or uncommons for her. That other than there's obviously Gallius Rax, but that's a legendary. I think that she flips. The stats are fine, and if she flips and like you can Voltron her or have something like that, then that's very good, because as long as you can keep playing a unit every turn, she has the very unique ability to just never die, unless they have Saboteur, because just all of the Sentinels that you're going to have. Yeah, I am a fan of Sloane, and I am actually a little bit surprised she's not been performing a tiny bit better. I'm not sure if she just like suffers specifically into the best decks. I guess Ezra having Saboteur is a bit of a downside for her. I don't know, but yeah, I think that she's very high potential there. But yeah, definitely, certainly not a tier 2 leader. Then Moff Gideon, I think there is potential here as well. There's just a lot of good Imperials that have good keywords. I think Gideon Blue is the best version because you get Imperial Armored Commando, right? If you have that, they eventually are able to kill it, and then you flip Moff Gideon and he has Shielded Sentinel. There's other, of course, keywords that you can get as well, but those are sort of the two big ones. You definitely need him to have Sentinel. I think if you can't get Sentinel reliably on Gideon, then don't play him, but if you can, then it's fine. And then if you could get more keywords, again, like Shielded, then it's going to be quite good. There are a lot of Imperial Sentinels in the set, so it shouldn't be too big of an issue for you to get Sentinel for him, but yeah, that's my opinion there. And then there's the rest of the rest. These are leaders that I think that generally you should just like avoid. Like these leaders, I think that you are putting yourself at a disadvantage if you play them, unless you really, really know what you're doing. But these leaders, I think you're putting yourself at a disadvantage if you play them, even if you do really know what you're doing. I think Vayne is like almost there, but it's just overshadowed by the other big 3 aggro deck in such like a profound way that I just don't think he's worth doing. I think Thrawn is close to being good, but he's just too win more. Like, if you flip him and you can start triggering his on-attack ability, yeah, you're gonna win that game, but, like, be so honest. Like, you were gonna win that game anyway, weren't you? And then Bo-Katan, if your opponent sees you're on Bo-Katan, they will prioritize you not being able to go crazy with her abilities, and she's just so easy to play around. Mandalorian, kind of a same idea. You're going to always have to play Undercurve to draw a couple extra cards. I mean, cards are nice, as we've seen in Constructed, and the support that you get as well here is nice. But I just don't think it's worth playing, like, because I don't really know what deck you're trying to do. Like, we've seen him be good in Constructed as a control leader, but control doesn't really exist in Limited. Not really, at least. Not in this set, certainly. Yeah, I think you're just going to get completely rolled over by any aggro deck if you play Mandalorian, and you're probably going to get rolled over by mid-range decks too, like Cad. Yeah. And then Grogu, I put in his own little tier at the bottom, because that's unfortunately where he belongs this set. Maybe one day we'll get a good Grogu leader. All right, that's the end of the video. So I didn't, obviously for these, 8 leaders plus Ahsoka, I didn't mention like best color pairings and cards to look for to see if someone's open or not. Because honestly, if someone is drafting Moff Gideon and they have playable leaders in their leader pool, like I look over and I see they have Cad, Ezra, Gideon, I am just immediately assuming they're not drafting Moff Gideon. And that will be wrong sometimes, but I think it will be right a high enough percentage of the time that it is worth doing that. The only time I will consider someone playing a leader like, I don't know, Sloane is if I look over and I see their other leaders are Bo-Katan and Grogu. And then I'm like, okay, they're probably playing Sloane. But yeah, in general, I think these are the big ones you want to try to find yourself, and then, of course, play around your opponents having them. And I think those are good signals to be looking out for. To see who's on what, because that is a huge part of the draft portion, right? If you can figure out what the person next to you is drafting, that gives you such an immense advantage. The earlier you figure it out, the better, of course, but, at any point in the draft, being able to just, and which is another reason why I'm getting a little bit off topic now, but one of my main strategies in draft is I like to stay on one color as long as I can, and ideally have that color be the color of my leader, right? Like if I open a Shin Hati and I'm like, I kind of want to play her, I'll just take as many good yellow villain cards as I can for like a while, because then the longer I wait, the more information I get about what people around me are doing, and the more I can, make an informed decision about what my secondary color will be. Now, you have to be a little bit careful about that, because if you see and continue to pass a bunch of good, let's say blue, as it comes by you, then the people to your left in pack 1, for example, will also be seeing that, and they may be influenced to go into blue, but so then in pack 2, you're a little bit cut off. So you have to be a little bit careful. It's a balance, but that is definitely a strategy I've been employing, and being able to have a good, I guess, dictionary of cards to look out for that may indicate people are or are not in certain leaders has been pretty handy in my experience. And hopefully I'll have good news for you regarding this weekend, and hopefully I manage to do okay at the PQ. And this hasn't all just been yapping for no good utility. All right, so stay tuned. I'm probably in the next couple weeks going to release cards I was most wrong about. There are a decent amount of them this set, and I've drafted a lot of this set now and done a lot of limited for the set in general, both at Galactic in preparation for Galactic, and now, or I guess in the next couple of weeks, this limited PQ. So for Lawless Time, I don't think I did one of these, not because I wasn't wrong about some cards, I certainly was, but more because I just didn't have a ton of experience drafting the set. I was more focused on Constructed and trying to, perform well at Constructed PQs. But this set, oh boy, do I have a lot to say about Limited. So there's going to be a big cards I was most wrong about video. And I have been wrong about some cards. For the Galactic practicing that we did for draft, I was not doing well. So I learned a lot about cards that I thought were maybe good, but were not. So I'm excited to share those with you. And lastly, I think I mentioned this on Blue Sky. I don't know if I've mentioned it in a video yet. I am strongly considering switching my channel's name. I have a few ideas for it. The sort of front runner right now is Toshi Station, because I'm on the team The Power Converters, so that's kind of like a funny tie-in, and then also it's like a radio station, kind of like a Toshi radio station. I don't know. What I'm getting at is I would like it very much if you went into the comments and had some suggestions for different channel names. Maybe you like the current name and you want me to keep it. I'm definitely open to hearing that as well. Yeah, would love to hear thoughts about that. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you have any limited PQs coming up, good luck on those. Please let me know how those go. As always, may the Force be with you.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?